is up, everybody? Welcome on back to another episode of Dropkicks and Joysticks. I am your host, Bloody Bill Vox. And last week was a doozy of an episode, huh? Talked about WWE 2K20. So when I was making the schedule for the rest of the year, because yes, I have every episode planned out for the rest of the year. I said, all right, I talked about WWE 2K20, so I got to follow it up with something good. So, as you can see on the screen, we'll be talking about Smackdown Here Comes the Pain in just a little bit. But as I always like to do at the top of the show, we talk a little bit about some current events. Once again, just like the WWE 2K20 episode, I'm recording this on the day that episode dropped. So this recording is ultimately going to be a week old. I can't seem to fix that schedule, so this is the ride we're on now. I can't fix that schedule. I don't know why. Mondays and Tuesdays seem to be the day I record, and it's a week in advance. This episode drops on October 30th. And just as a quick side note, shout out to my youngest stepkid. It's his birthday today. Won't share his name or anything like that here on the podcast, but my youngest stepchild, as this episode drops, it's his birthday today. So happy birthday, buddy. But so yeah, let's talk a little bit of current events though. Never mind this whole time machine business. I think I put too much emphasis on the time machine here, where I'm like, okay, I'm recording on this day, it's going to drop on this day. What has happened? What do we know? What could happen? Just going to start, rolling with it. Maybe at some point I'll be able to transition more to a Thursday, Friday type deal, or maybe I just need to move the podcast day. That's always something to consider. Maybe we just change the day. So if I record on a Monday, maybe we make the show drop on a Wednesday instead, so there's not so much space in between. Food for thought. Anyway, in the current events scheme, I wrote down 3 different notes that I wanted to kind of talk about real briefly before we get into it. So as this episode is recorded, Impact Wrestling just announced that they are bringing back the TNA name in 2024. If I understand it all correctly, it will begin with the Hard to Kill pay-per-view sometime in January. They got a date. It might even be one of my sister's birthdays, actually, in January. But either way, all this birthday talk's crazy. But Impact is going back to TNA. I've seen positive response to it. I've seen negative response to it. I've seen indifference. The indifference was because they were like, the general response was, well, I never stopped calling it TNA anyway. And the positives, they people are just happy that it's coming back. It's nostalgic to them. They prefer the TNA name over Impact. And then, of course, the negatives are like, oh, it's not an advertiser-friendly name because of the connotation of tits and ass. And I think that's just people looking to make some negatives out of it. Like, I don't see any negative behind it. At a point in time, it was pretty clear that they were going for, the connection between TNA, the promotion, and TNA, the tits and ass. But I think they made it pretty abundantly clear over time that TNA for them stood for total nonstop action. They got themselves on Spike TV, which again was kind of a TNA network. But I don't know. Personally, I don't think it's going to be a negative for the organization. If anything, it might be a positive. It might bring some people back that were lost over time through the Impact years where management was a little shaky. I think under the helm of Scott D'Amore and his team up there in Ontario, I think Impact is in the best shape it's been in. I think they desperately need to start considering more regular on-the-road shows, because maybe they don't want to be seen as more than this, but the promo from Scott D'Amore says they do. Their shows seem small. They seem second-rate. They'll never seem like equal to WWE or even AEW. Impact feels like a less than compared to AEW. in terms of presentation and venues. And yeah, we'll talk about AEW and the venues and their presentation in a second. But the point I'm driving at is Impact has always been one of those brands that just stays put. And I think it hurts. Because they're not even, like, it's not like an MLW that they travel around, but they tend to run a lot of the same places, but they're well-known places, like the ECW Arena, for example, the 2300 Arena now. It makes them seem like more major league, no pun intended there. It makes them seem more major league because they run these somewhat notorious wrestling venues and present their product as part of it. So I think if TNA also means some significant changes from a company standpoint and from a presentation, venues, the whole 9 yards. I was starting to lose my train of thought, and my brain was like, save it, buddy. Don't putter out. I made it. Sort of. I deserve a sip of water for that. Love me some nice water. But I think it'll be exciting for TNA to tap into that nostalgic idea with TNA coming back. And, who knows what it could lead to. Maybe it will make them a little more advertiser-friendly again if they do the right marketing. Who knows? But speaking of that smaller presentation, let's talk AEW and their attendance. As I record this episode, last week Sting announced his retirement match for AEW Revolution, which usually happens around March. Or late February? I don't know. It's their first pay-per-view of the calendar year. And so Sting announced his retirement in front of about 2,000 people. And then there was another photo circulating of Samoa Joe where he's cutting a promo to the hard camera side, and there's like 7 people in the seats on the hard camera side. And I'm sure on TV it looked like the arena's full, and that's the beauty of TV and cameras and positioning and all that stuff. You can make an empty arena look full. You just got to position everybody the right way. And I think AEW does that. You can tell when they're taking the tighter shots because the arena isn't as full. But the point of me bringing up these empty arenas is not to dog on AEW, because that's typically what it is when people share these photos of these half-full arenas out on X and Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and wherever else they're being shared. Usually the aim is making fun. I'm not pointing this out to make fun because I want AEW, I want everybody to succeed. Honestly, I think a competitive wrestling landscape is just smart for everybody. Or not smart, that's not the good word. Beneficial. There we go. It's beneficial to everybody. More places to work, more money to be made, more fans to try and to go after. So what I'm suggesting in mentioning these attendances is AEW seems to be able to, on average, depending on where they go, draw between 2,000 and 4,000 people. Why not start considering some smaller venues like ECW used to do back in the day? Run these smaller venues where 3,000 can look like 10. There are some venues that, as I've been watching back ECW Hardcore TV, I'm nearing the end of my watch through as I record this episode. They ran some venues set up. The place looked like it was just deep with people, and there's probably like 2,000 people in attendance. So what I'm saying is maybe AEW should consider running these smaller venues, packing them, creating some sort of urgency around the tickets hey, there's only 2,500 seats in this venue. Oh, but 3,000 people want tickets. Well, then you can start saying sellout. And yeah, you're still going to have people being like, oh, yeah, they sold out 2,500. Good for them. You got to start somewhere. You got to create that feeling that you can't wait till the day of to buy tickets. And that comes through television presentation as well, and that's a whole different animal. And I'm not watching any live TV right now, wrestling-wise or other. So I can't tell you how the weekly shows are being presented. I know the last show that I watched was the week with NXT against AEW, which is still being debated now, 20-something days later, however many days it's been. Jesus. And there were issues for me as a fan with how some of that show was presented. But I don't know if that was just, that week or if that's been a weekly issue. I read the discourse online. I read the results online. But, you only know what you know from reading. You know a lot more from seeing when it comes to wrestling, in my opinion. But just putting that out there in the universe as AEW's attendance continues to just dwindle, it seems, on a weekly basis, that, maybe they might consider, running small spots like, like the ECW arena, even though MLW is probably going to lock on that. Small spots like the ECW arena or the Hammerstein Ballroom or, I can't think of what the name of the place is in Chicago that ECW used to run, but there was the O'Hare Arena in Dayton, Ohio. I think that place is still around, like falling apart. I might be wrong there. But, maybe consider those intimate venues, those 2,000 and 3,000 seaters that you can get all your stuff in, all your staging in, and still, have a rowdy crowd that is in a full arena, and just do it. I mean, there was an era where WWE was doing it. Like, I remember being at a Monday Night Raw, Durham, New Hampshire, Whittemore Center. I don't think that place holds more than 3,000 people. It's the arena for the college hockey team. Or it was, still is. I don't know. I don't follow UNH hockey. As this episode is recording, we are heading towards Crown Jewel. It's another in the Saudi event calendar over the 10-year agreement. The Saudi events cause a lot of issues between people. Debating whether it's okay to watch it and that sort of thing. Saudi Arabia is its own topic, and it's not a topic for this show. What is a topic for the show is for me to speculate about the results. I don't know if I'll be watching it or not. It's a Saturday afternoon, so I may go back and watch it after the fact. Who knows? I might be live on Twitch when the damn thing starts. Seriously, I literally don't know. And because I don't keep up with the TV product, there's a little bit of issue with urgency for me in watching these pay-per-views. Like, outside of the big four, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, Rumble, and WrestleMania, I'll watch those no matter what, and I'll be excited for it. But Crown Jewel, throwaway event, probably. Whatever. Because I don't think Seth Rollins is going to lose his World Heavyweight title. I don't think they're going to put the belt on LA Knight and end Roman Reigns' run just when they started teasing Roman and Cody again. I don't think Rhea Ripley is going to lose the Women's World Championship. Shit, I'll go bold on that. I don't think she's losing that thing until WrestleMania, especially with Elimination Chamber being in Perth, Australia. The only championship that I could see changing hands, and I don't know how I feel about it. They did just give him his first win, so they may not feel compelled to give him another win, but Logan Paul called out Rey Mysterio for a United States Championship match. Rey Mysterio, of course, accepted. That match is going to go down. I got a feeling that they might put the United States Championship on Logan Paul. Of course, that would mean that Logan Paul needs to be on WWE television a lot more than he is now. I could see the business reasons in wanting to do it, but I just don't think I like it. I think I want to see Logan Paul around more. We've already got a part-time champion. I don't think SmackDown especially needs another part-time champion. So that's my one question mark. And as I record this episode, I think the only other match that I could see it kind of being teased that might happen for this is maybe John Cena against Solo Sikoa. They were teasing that on a recent SmackDown. I think they brawled or something like that. And even as I record this episode, another edition of SmackDown will have happened before it drops. So that match might even already be made. If it goes down Solo versus Cena, that could be a toss-up, and that could be something that gets me interested in at least wanting to see that match, because I could definitely see Cena doing the job. I think Cena's approaching that point in his career where you're going to see him do a lot more jobs than victories, and you're going to see him in not necessarily title pictures, but enhancing the picture. So if that goes down, Cena and Solo Sikoa in Saudi Arabia, I think we could see Solo take that victory there. But of course, who knows what the matches will be. It's October 30th. As this episode drops, it was recorded on October 23rd, so there's a whole week in the middle that some matches could have been made. That's why I think I need to maybe change the recording day. But anyway, let's get into the topic of discussion this week. Yeah, you see it on your screen. SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain for the PlayStation 2. That was a nice, smooth transition. I just ended my previous thought and went right into SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain. I'm proud of myself on that one. But this one just celebrated a 20-year anniversary, having been released on October 27th, 2003, and it was only released on the PlayStation 2. I always found that interesting, but that's also because the Xbox was getting its own exclusives at the time. Funny enough, they were Raw games. Huh. Call me 20 years late on this one. Maybe everybody's already been having this thought, but I'm literally in my brain. Xbox versus PlayStation, Raw versus SmackDown. Holy shit, my mind just got blown. Wow. Seriously, my mind just got blown. Like right here, live, as I record it, 7 days later, as you listen to it, or whenever you're listening to it. My arms are extended and everything. Mind just blown. Is that what they were going for? Raw versus SmackDown in the same way that it was Xbox versus PlayStation? Wow. All right, sorry for that. Like I said, I might be 20 years late on that thought, but holy moly. SmackDown versus Raw. You got me into that whole train of thought there. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain was the final in the original SmackDown series, is kind of how I refer to it. I call the original SmackDown series starting with SmackDown on the PlayStation 1 up through this, because we had SmackDown 2, we had SmackDown Just Bring It, we had SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, and SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. So to me, it was all one series, and I don't think I'm off in that. But what a way to go out from the more arcade style of a game that WWE had been putting out for quite a while at this point, before it moved on to the road towards more simulation based with the SmackDown versus Raw series. Like, there's a lot of those arcade elements still present as they move forward, but the games I feel take a turn with SmackDown versus Raw into more of that simulation based, a more realistic presentation, if you will. But this game was very highly rated. Even our grumpy friends over at GameSpot gave it a 9 out of 10. And usually they're the lowest of the ratings. In fact, this time I happened to pull 4. The lowest of the ratings that I pulled was Game Informer at 8.5 out of 10. We had IGN giving it a 9.1 out of 10, and we had Honest Gamers giving it a 9 out of 10. So overall, I mean, pretty much this game, for what I could find, is easily equivalents of 7.5, 8, or higher. I say equivalents of 7.5 because I did see one that was like, what would it look like? 3 and most of a 4th star or something like that. So they were giving it a 3.75 out of 5. So, the equivalent of. The game is quite in depth in its game modes, in its roster. Right before I started recording, I prepared my notes for this episode, and I realized that I didn't write down any of the game modes. So I went in and powered up, and I was just blown away at how many different options there are for play outside of the season mode, which was the biggest draw for me when I played the season mode, because I liked the idea of fantasy booking. I liked the idea of simulating calendar years. I always wanted to see a full-on wrestling simulation with WWE games, like similar to what we see in the NBA 2K games now, where like you go into cities and you go into restaurants, and AEW kind of tried it with their Road to the Elite mode. But I forgot how many different match modes were in here. This game was the first to have the Elimination Chamber. And for better or worse, it was the first to have the bra and panties match. So I powered up the game to go look at the game modes. Because like I said, I forgot to put the game modes in my notes. And I'm blown away by this. So when you go into Exhibition, you are met with such a deep menu. And it doesn't look like it up front, because you just got single tag, 6-man tag, handicap, hardcore, Royal Rumble, survival, and main events. Okay, but within your main events, here are the matches that you can pick from. 3 Stages of Hell, Bra and Panties, Steel Cage, Elimination Chamber, Elimination Tag Team Match, First Blood Match, Hell in a Cell Match, Iron Man Match, Ladder Match, Last Man Standing, Lumberjack Match, Slobber Knocker, which, if I recall, is basically like a gauntlet match. You go as long as you can make it before you lose. Special Referee, Submission, Table, and TLC. So let's see, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different matches. 16 different match types just under main events. And then as I scrolled through, I was like, oh, what's Survival? Oh, Survival is multi-man matches. So you get your triple threat matches, your fatal 4-way matches, your 4-man, 5-man, and 6-man battle royals. You can do Royal Rumble matches, hardcore matches. Your handicap matches, you can go up to 1-on-3, 6-man tags, tag team matches, singles. Then you got the season mode, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But I'm amazed for a PlayStation 2 game, for how not little space those games had, but compared to today's games, and we don't have nearly any of these modes nowadays. Some of these are super tough to come by. Some of them you have to create on your own within the game, utilizing the in-game rules. Super duper deep in the match modes. If you were the type of guy like I am that likes to cycle through everything, before you even repeat a match type, let's see. We had 16 there. As there's 17, 18, 19, 22, 23, 24. And then Survival had 5. 29 match types before you'd really have to repeat a similar style of match. That is something that I did not remember when I was making my notes, because I played the hell out of the season mode, and I remember things like, the Hell in a Cell being in there, and I remember the Elimination Chamber because I remember the steel grate being so nasty that when I'd be in those matches, if I was first in there, I'd take my opponent, I'd whip them out to the outside, and I would just slam them again and again and again and again and again on the steel grate, because it took extra health out of them or whatever, and you could put these people away much faster. So, I mean, I remember those things, but, you know, I didn't remember being so deep until I powered it back on, and I literally took pictures of my TV to have it, because I needed to have those notes. So, you got 29 different match types, but who are you going to play with? Well, 65 different characters. 65 different characters. And before we get into the roster, though, because the notes were kind of all over the place this week, and then my game mode discovery and the Raw versus SmackDown brain explosion we just had there, courtesy of our good friends at Smackdown Hotel, and they don't even know I exist, but you know they provide a lot of great info, so they're my great friends anyway. They may not know who I am. Courtesy of Smackdown Hotel, as always, unless otherwise noted. Let's read you the summary of the game. We've already talked about the game modes, and we're going to start talking about the roster. But let's read you the summary. WWE Smackdown Here Comes the Pain is a wrestling video game released in 2003 for the PlayStation 2 by THQ and developed by Yuke's Future Media creators. It is the 5th installment in the WWE Smackdown series, successor to WWE Smackdown Shut Your Mouth. It was also the final WWE game to solely use the Smackdown name, as it was succeeded by WWE Smackdown vs. Raw in November 2004. The drama comes to life like never before in WWE Smackdown Here Comes the Pain. Players can create, play, and develop their own superstar through storylines developed exclusively by the WWE. The game features enhanced gameplay elements with new match types and sensational production values that recreate all the electricity of actual WWE programming. Players can track their progress with seasonal stats, earn money to build up superstar abilities, and unlock hidden features. The game features 65 superstars. The main features include an exclusive story with original plot lines developed by the WWE writers for the video game, unique superstar abilities featuring real-life attributes of strength, submission, technique, speed, and stamina, new and improved controls including an in-depth countering and interactive submission system, all new match types including bra and panty, first blood, and elimination chamber, enhanced production values featuring camera transitions, dynamic camera transitions, an improved audio experience, superstar voiceovers, and more realistic animations. Sounds like a fun time to me based on that write-up, right? And fun note there is apparently this was also the first time for First Blood. I didn't realize it, but according to this, it was new. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But everything it says here, in my opinion, it followed through on, especially the improving of the controls with the countering improvements. Still, it's a double button system, and I still hate it as a result. And yeah, the production values at the time. That was one of the things that drew me to these games is how close I felt I was to looking at an actual WWE program. And obviously now with the way technology has moved, they look more and more lifelike every year. But at the time in 2003, when this game came out, you know, things like the entrance videos that IGN would post would be what got me excited for the game coming out. Sometimes they'd roll them out like daily. Sometimes they'd roll them out weekly. It all depended on what the schedule was. But I remember 2003, you know, I've had a computer for 4 years at this point, and I'm jumping on that dial-up, or even by 2003, we might have had cable internet by then. I think we had cable internet by then. But anyway, in 2003, I'm jumping on every day to see when these videos are being posted because, you know, it's roster reveal. It's seeing how close to the actual TV property the presentation is. I remember sitting back and just loving it. And The other fun thing about it is, as we have learned, Mr. Theme Music Lover over here, it offered me little snippets of what theme music was going to be in this game, which in turn then told me what theme music was going to be getting posted in the theme music forums. They were only like 1 minute cuts in these games. I think the SmackDown games, it was like, yeah, the music was only about a minute because the entrances typically weren't that long. But that transitions me beautifully into our roster. 65 different characters in this one. Year over year over year, the rosters would continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. This year, I mean, I don't know year over year what the numbers were, but this has quite a nice mix of current stars and legends. So 65 names. I don't always subject to the listing, but I love the mix because 2003 WWE had so much talent. Even if the programming wasn't always the best, they had a lot of talent. And then the legends they included. So let's go through it. 65 of them. I can do it. You can do it. We can all do it. Here we go. A-Train, Batista, Booker T, Brock Lesnar, Bubba Ray Dudley, Charlie Haas, Chavo Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Christian, Devon Dudley, Eddie Guerrero, Edge, Eric Bischoff, George the Animal Steel, Goldberg, Goldust, Hillbilly Jim, The Iron Sheik, Jazz, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, John Cena, Kane, Kevin Nash, Kurt Angle, Lance Storm, Lita, Matt Hardy, Nikolai Volkov, Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Rhino, Ric Flair, Rico, Rikishi, Road Warrior Animal, Road Warrior Hawk, Rob Van Dam, Roddy Piper, Rodney Mack, Sable, Scott Steiner, Sean O'Hare, Sergeant Slaughter, Shawn Michaels, Shelton Benjamin, Stacy Keibler, Stephanie McMahon, Steven Richards, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Tajiri, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, not the guy that steals money, Test, The Big Show, The Hurricane. Shit. I popped myself. Whoopsie. Let's get back here. I think I just said the Hurricane out loud before I started laughing, so we'll pick it up back. Pick it up back there. The Hurricane, The Rock, The Undertaker, 2003 version of The Undertaker, and then early 90s version of The Undertaker, the old black and gray. Torrie Wilson, Triple H, Trish Stratus, The Ultimo Dragon, Val Venus, Victoria, and Vince McMahon. And then just to round out our listing of things, with those 65 superstars and the 29 different match types, you can play all these out ultimately as you unlock them in the following arenas. Monday Night Raw. I'm going to break this out. I'm going to go... the following arenas are from 2003. Or two. We'll do 2002 first. The following arenas are from 2002. And then the next set will be from 2003. So the arenas from 2002, we got Vengeance, SummerSlam, Unforgiven, No Mercy, Rebellion, Survivor Series, and Armageddon. Then from the year 2003, we've got Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, Sunday Night Heat, Velocity. Moving down the list, Royal Rumble, No Way Out, WrestleMania 19, Backlash, Judgment Day, Insurrection, and Bad Blood. The arena listing there is so great because it's a total throwback to the era when we still got custom stages for every different pay-per-view that happened throughout the year. With the exception of our Raw and Heat SmackDown Velocity, because Heat and Velocity were taped at Raw and SmackDown respectively. Every single one of these stages in the game is different. Nowadays, they all look basically the same. It's a giant video wall, maybe a couple different colors, maybe a few different lights, but otherwise, it's pretty much the same damn setup for every PLE pay-per-view when it comes to the WWE. This game is one of those examples of how the custom stages were just incredible back in the day and how they used to put a lot of thought into these things, and I don't know why they don't put as much thought into them as they used to, but they don't. In my opinion. Other than for WrestleMania, not really SummerSlam, because they've been kind of crapping out on doing the stage for SummerSlam as they start running stadium shows. So I don't know. Going back on the roster, I did want to note, thanks to a Wrestling Fandom Wiki page, this was the debut in WWE video games of Batista, Charlie Haas, Chavo Guerrero, John Cena, Sean O'Hare, Scott Steiner, Shelton Benjamin, and the Ultimo Dragon. And another fun trivia note, not related to the roster, but it's the last thing in my list of trivia notes. This was the last WWE game to feature intergender matches where the men and the women could actually wrestle each other. Now the closest you get is the mixed tag team matches, the mixed match challenge, if you will. While this game was the first appearance for the handful of superstars that we just mentioned, two WWE legends were slated to be in this game, and there's even footage if you look on YouTube, and I'm not going to link to the Ultimate Warrior one anyway, because the guy that posted it uses a slur in relation to the Ultimate Warrior, which is funny because the Warrior used similar slurs, but I'm not going to promote it either way. But if you look up Ultimate Warrior Smackdown, Here Comes the Pain, you'll see some footage. Namely, what I saw was the Ultimate Warrior versus The Rock in a Hell in a Cell match. But Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior were two guys that were supposed to be in this game that never made it to the game. And there were a lot of other people that didn't make it either because of injury, inactivity, being released. Hogan was one of those cases, but he had to be pulled from the game, whereas other people that were released just weren't included. They were able to be not included because they got fired early enough. For example, Jeff Hardy was somebody that, as I understand it, was released early enough to where he wasn't really a factor in anything to do with the game. Whereas Hulk Hogan, on the other hand, left the company in June. This game comes out in October. It's 4 months to pull it out, to pull the Hogan content out is what I was trying to get at. And so, as you'll find if you look it up on YouTube as well, there was obviously promotional materials with Hogan included. But the Ultimate Warrior one is a bit more interesting of a story because it all started with a licensing deal gone bad, basically. The Ultimate Warrior and THQ had been talking licensing, and they couldn't end up coming to terms, and so they had to pull the Ultimate Warrior from the game. And again, if you look on YouTube, you'll see that there is footage that he was supposed to be included in the game. There was interviews and all of that jazz. So they pull the Warrior's likeness, but apparently they leave in all of his motions, his moves, and everything else, and even similar bat symbols or something like that to kind of look like the Ultimate Warrior, but not be the Ultimate Warrior. So it winds up in court. The Ultimate Warrior, and what was it? Ultimate Creations is his company name, sued THQ over infringement. And they went back and forth, and ultimately THQ agreed to settle the case out of court. It was dismissed with, I don't know, with judgment or without prejudice. Basically, in other words, in taking away the legal terminology, basically they settled because the way that I read it is Warrior's defense wasn't exactly strong, but unless THQ's was bulletproof, he stood a chance of winning. And that could have set some wild precedent for video games in the future. Could you imagine all the different wrestling personalities that have their motions in video games if they had been able to say, no, you can't keep using those year over year? See the case where the Ultimate Warrior kicked your ass. But ultimately, the Warrior probably got himself a nice little payout or something, or they agreed to something. I couldn't find the ultimate decision, but things didn't last forever between these guys. The case started in 2003 and it went until the settlement in 2009, and the Ultimate Warrior was back in WWE games by 2009. His first appearance back, and then being for Legends of WrestleMania. Although, as I noted, in my research, he never actually made it to any of the main roster games under the THQ banner, which is surprising to me. We had SmackDown versus Raw 2009 that he could have maybe been a part of. There was, SmackDown versus Raw 10, 11, WWE 12, WWE 13. He was in WWE 14, obviously 30 years of WrestleMania, but that was the first one under the 2K banner. So interesting trivia note there about the Ultimate Warrior. He could have been in a number of WWE games over the years, despite his shaky relationship with the company, because in 2003, they were not on good terms. It would be about another year and a half before we got the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. Always the back and forths, Warrior suing for this, that, and the other thing over the years, and very contentious relationship. But maybe the fences would have been mended a little sooner if he had been in the game. But, the Ultimate Warrior wasn't absent from video games. He would appear in Showdown Legends of Wrestling. He was a big addition, one of the big gets, if you will, for Showdown Legends of Wrestling. But it's just, it's funny to see the footage of the Warrior in this game on YouTube. It's got to be like 360p, just a fun note for you video buffs out there, because it's tiny and it's square, but it's the Warrior. It almost looked like he was wearing... It almost looked like his SummerSlam 91 getup, but I'm probably wrong about that. But either way, still fun to think about what could have been if they had been able to work things out. So let's take a quick look at the season mode, because I talked about that one quite a bit. I got to get my notes in order here. So season mode here once again comes from the Wiki fandom page. This is a fun little write-up, and it summarizes the whole deal perfectly. So kudos to whoever did this write-up, because it's not from, THQ or anything like that. Well, let's get into it. The game features a 1-year-long season mode filled with intense storylines. During a 3-month storyline, the selected superstar will participate in some sort of rivalry with Vince McMahon Jr., chairman of WWE. The two storylines can go either of these ways, depending on a decision you make at the SummerSlam pay-per-view. You can either feud one-on-one with McMahon, or you can create a faction and feud against McMahon and his members of the corporation. Some moments resemble storylines actually featured on WWE programming, while others were created specifically for the game. Each storyline is initiated at the end of a pay-per-view event. Jim Ross, Eric Bischoff, Jerry Lawler, Vince McMahon, Jonathan Coachman, or Stephanie McMahon will approach you and make a suggestion. If you agree, you will begin a storyline at the next show, which will end at another pay-per-view, level. If you decline, you will go the month without a storyline and potentially without matches. If you are not in a storyline, you may approach your general manager, which is Stephanie McMahon for SmackDown or Eric Bischoff for Monday Night Raw, and request to be redrafted to another brand or compete for a title shot. If you are in a storyline, your request, geez, I'm having a hard time, will be denied. Notice a couple words there. I'm just like, in terms of my pronunciation, so I'm sorry. Storylines are dependent on which brands your character represents. Also, the character you choose is irrelevant unless you pick a main event caliber superstar. Prior to any match, you may choose to walk about the arena. Occasionally, another superstar will be there. On most occasions, this will result in an interaction in which you must make a decision. The correct decision will lead to a SmackDown Dollars bonus, an extra rating point, or an advantage in your next match. A bad decision will result in the loss of a rating point and possibly an added handicap in your next match. Also, during WrestleMania, your superstar can initiate Shawn Michaels' WrestleMania 12 entrance if you choose a special entrance. You get presented with the idea of making a special entrance, and it can be quite comical, depending on who you're playing with, to have somebody zip line in at WrestleMania 19, even, to make that entrance. But the season mode in this game was the big driving point for me continuing to play. Like, yeah, the exhibitions were fun. I liked the exhibitions more for when I was hanging out with my buddies and stuff. When all my buddies would come over to my my house, I was still living with my mother at this point in time. I think I moved out within a year after this game. Yeah, within a year, I think. Anyway, so I liked playing those matches with the buddies when they would come over. Many all night sessions, maybe not so much all night, but being up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning with these guys, and then they go home, or if they were sleeping over, we finally go to sleep, whatever the case was. Always some, as Cody Rhodes said, always a few libations on the bus. I love that. I've been using it ever since he said it on that press conference. If I want to say that I might be under the influence of alcoholic or otherwise substance, I say I may have had a few libations on the bus. But the season mode, for me, as I was saying before, is I always like the idea of fantasy booking, playing out calendar years, simulating, and this story mode got very close. For me, at the time, anyway. You didn't go out into the cities, you didn't go out to restaurants, but you could at least roam around the backstage area. You could get into some shit. You could try to get yourself a title match. You could try to change shows if you weren't in a story. I always liked how they came up to you and presented stuff like one that stands out to me right now, having not played a season mode recently. Jim Ross comes up to you and, Sassafras, we're going to be going over to the UK, and, I think it'd be good for you to go on that UK tour and be on the Rebellion show. What did you say there, Sassafras? Terrible JR impression. It was basically my impression of Bruce Pritchard doing an impression of Jim Ross. It's terrible. But, it allowed for you to make choices in the game. You didn't just have to play something straight through. You could take your chance and not do a storyline. Nah, I don't like that. And as the write-up said, you might not get any matches. You might have to go pick fights. You might have to ask to change brands. You might have to try and get a title match. But at least the options were there. I replayed the story mode a whole bunch with a variety of different characters. Main event level, lower level. I always liked randomizing, and I still like randomizing to this day. I haven't turned on 2K23 in quite a while, but I like turning on the game and just hitting the random button for both. All right, it randomly chose for me Tajiri, and then randomly my opponent is going to be The Undertaker. All right, let's go. That's the match. So sometimes I would do that with the season mode. Like, I probably have experienced every possible outcome in that season mode, but I don't know for sure. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But the season mode to me is where the replay value really comes in. Yeah, sure, it's fun to play the other modes on your own because you can really mix and match and have lots of fun there. But for me, the season mode was where it was at because, yeah, you'd end up recycling some of the stuff, but realistically, it felt like a different experience every time to take somebody different. So if one time I took Triple H, but the next time I took Christian, and then the time after that I decided to take the Ultimo Dragon through the season, for example. Everybody listening, if you feel the same way, but I love the whole season mode thing, and I loved it in all the games they put it in. And I wish that it still worked to some degree like that these days. The closest thing we got to it is universe mode, and that thing's a hot mess in these video games. But I loved being able to play through the WWE year. And then when you hit WrestleMania with one character, you go ahead and pick a new one, start a brand new season. It was like starting a new year with a new character. It was almost like WWE 24 before the WWE 24 documentaries were even a thing. You were taking a character and you were playing through essentially 365 days of their wrestling life at the venues, in the ring, behind the scenes. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And we'll get into my final review in just a few moments. But before we start wrapping up our discussion, as I have started to make a better effort about, and like I said, it was in the notes template, so it's always going to be included now, taking a look back at some of what was going on in the WWE at the time of this release. If it's another promotion, obviously, or unlicensed, we'll look at wrestling in general or that promotion. But where it's WWE, we're going to just only look at WWE. So the release of this game, what was the date I said? October 27th, falls right around all sorts of fun stuff going on in the WWE world. 8 days prior to this game's release is the WWE No Mercy 2003 pay-per-view. It's during the Raw and SmackDown alternating pay-per-view era. So this was a SmackDown-only event. And one of the marquee matches on the card was a father versus daughter I Quit match. Vince McMahon with Sable in his corner against Stephanie McMahon. It's her name I can't say today. Stephanie McMahon with her mother Linda in her corner. Why is this notable? Why are you focusing on the fact that Vince and Stephanie had a father-daughter I Quit match at No Mercy 8 days before this game came out? Well, that's because 6 days after that event, 2 days before this game came out, Stephanie McMahon was getting married to one Triple H. So 6 days prior to her wedding, her father, head of WWE Creative at the time, books her in a I Quit match against Vince, known for delivering a bunch of potatoes. Apparently, Vince was adamantly threatened by his wife, Linda, that Stephanie better not turn up with any bruises, broken bones, contusions, nothing. Basically, from what I could gather, nobody was overly impressed that Vince decided to book this angle and book the match to happen when he did. It was all a part of, I think, a greater story in the long run to bring back the Dead Man Undertaker, because this match leads into a match with The Undertaker at the 2003 Survivor Series, which sees Taker get buried alive, and he comes back as a dead man at WrestleMania 20. But in that match, Linda throws in the towel eventually when Stephanie, I think, is being choked out with a lead pipe. So as a result, she had to take off. She was gone. She had to vacate her position as SmackDown GM, and something I didn't think to look up ahead of time that I am doing now is who replaced her. Oh, there we go. List of SmackDown on-air personalities. So yeah, we had Vince, Shawn, Jesus. Look at this. Look at this fucking... I thought it was Paul Heyman that replaced her. But let's just look at a list of the authority figures on SmackDown for a hot second, because I just looked it up and I found a list. We had Mr. McMahon. He was first. Shawn Michaels was a commissioner. Mick Foley was a commissioner. Deborah was a lieutenant commissioner. William Regal was a commissioner. Mick Foley was a commissioner once again. Ric Flair was an owner of the company. Then we had the brand split, and Stephanie was the first GM of SmackDown, and then she is later replaced, actually, at the SmackDown taping right after this event. She's replaced by Paul Heyman. So Stephanie ends up leaving TV, essentially to go get married, it would seem. But elsewhere on this card, we had Tajiri and Rey Mysterio. Tajiri retaining the Cruiserweight Championship over Rey Mysterio. Chris Benoit defeated A-Train. Zach Gowen defeated Matt Hardy. The Basham Brothers defeated the APA. Kurt Angle defeated John Cena, who is at this point just months away from truly popping off when he wins the U.S. title. Speaking of the U.S. title, Big Show, the man that Cena would defeat for the title eventually, defeats Eddie Guerrero for the United States Championship, and Brock Lesnar retained the WWE Championship against The Undertaker in a biker chain match. And then on the Monday Night Raw side of things, in this era, this is the era where Triple H has a $100,000 bounty out on Goldberg's head because Goldberg won the World Heavyweight Championship in September. Batista ultimately cashes in at the end of this month. Shane McMahon and Kane are having their wild feud that involved burning dumpsters, car crashes, and electrocuted testicles. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Eric Bischoff are feuding as co-GMs that will eventually lead into a 5-on-5 Team Austin versus Team Bischoff winner-takes-all match at Survivor Series. The same day that this game came out on a live edition of Monday Night Raw, October 27th, 2003, Rob Van Dam defeats Chris Jericho in a steel cage match to win the Intercontinental Championship. And then, this isn't so much something that was ongoing, but it stood out to me. An actual match that happened on Monday Night Raw in October of 2003 was a tables match, 4-on-4. On one side, we had Chris Jericho, Christian, and La Resistance. And on the other side, we had Shane McMahon, the Dudley Boys, and a returning Booker T. Wow, what a team. WWE 2003 is kind of rough. More so on the Monday Night Raw side. I think SmackDown was generally pretty solid. They always had some great wrestling going on. And then when Paul Heyman became a GM, that added to the mix. I love Paul Heyman in those speaking roles. But yeah, WWE 2003 can be pretty rough at times. But at the time of this game coming out, I'd say Monday Night Raw was a little shaky with Goldberg at the top, and Goldberg's run wasn't exactly great. And, you know, this is during the Triple H reign of terror, as people like to say. Yeah, I just 2003 is not entirely a year I look back on super fondly as I sit here and think about it. Like, even that No Mercy card that we just read, like, not exactly the strongest card ever. There's some good talent on it, but not the strongest card. And then some of our storytelling on the other side, I think we started to head into a little bit better in 2004, a little bit. But, you know, as we go on in the 2000s and even later, the storytelling gets pretty rough at various times in WWE. But I think that also plays more into the idea that WWE isn't always pro wrestling. It's sports entertainment, as they like to say, with an influence based in wrestling. But before we go ahead and wrap up this week's show, I want to go ahead and do my final review, as I always like to close out with, before we start telling you what's going to be going on the next episode of the show. But let's get into it, because I'm already starting to stammer, and this is why I write it in advance, because I was trying to look up what the next show is scheduled to be, and I'll tell a story of why, as I record this episode, that I don't know if that episode is going to happen. So let's rock and roll. Oh, dear Lord. Schedule could be in trouble. This schedule could be in trouble. We might have to do some filtering around. We'll talk about that in a few. But let's do my final review, then we'll tell you what could be next week, and then maybe what the backup might be. Whole different, a lot going on. Anyway, my final review. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain was the culmination of the original SmackDown series before things went in a more simulation-based direction with the SmackDown vs. Raw series in 2004. From the first PS2 entry of Just Bring It to Shut Your Mouth to Here Comes the Pain, the game continued to get a little bit better every time, despite our angry friends at GameSpot giving the game a 9 out of 10, but saying it lacked innovation. I don't know, 29 different match types seems a little innovative. I'm not sure how someone can give that rating and say the game lacked innovation, but whatever. For its time, I thought the game was ahead of the curve compared to the few other offerings on the market in 2003. The roster is one of the most eclectic mixes of talents in the early games. Nowadays, it's not uncommon for the WWE to be littered with current talents and legends alike, but back in 2003, there wasn't as much space on these games, and as a result, it made for much more interesting mixes because not every active performer would make it, and there was only so much space for legends. The legends list was solid in this one, with entries such as the Road Warriors, Black and Gray Undertaker, the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, and even George the Animal Steele, who, as a fun side note, has never appeared on another console WWE game since. He's only been in the WWE mobile games. The season mode is really fun because it's broken up month by month. You have options to choose if you want to do the angle or if you want to take your chances and search for fights, and it's only 1 year of gameplay, so it can easily be played in a weekend if you've got the time, and because the game is so fun and there are unlockables, there's multiple reasons to keep playing the mode again and again and again by making different choices each time as well. Just about everyone I could see gave this game an 8.5 or the equivalent or higher. I did see one 7.5, so I should have fixed that note. But anyway, let's fix that there. Just about everyone I could see gave this game a 7.5 or higher. We didn't say anything about 8.5. What are you talking about? And I would be inclined to agree with them. As this episode drops, as noted earlier, the game just celebrated a 20-year anniversary, and 20 years later, I can still pick this game up and get lost in it for hours at any time. My official rating would line up with everybody else's that we kind of cited at the top. The 9 out of 10 crowd, I'm with you. It's a damn near perfect game. And I don't know what the perfect game would be. I mean, maybe my perfect game is a licensed version of WWF Legends Challenge 64, the No Mercy mod. Get that today. But it's as close to damn near perfect as we can get. So would I recommend somebody play SmackDown Here Comes the Pain if they haven't played it yet in their life? Yes. Go play it. What are you waiting for? It can be a pricey copy to find because it's one of the more sought after, but play it however you can play it. This and No Mercy are the two most requested reboots, and there's been a lot of rumors in recent years that some folks in the 2K development team might have been working on something around a Here Comes the Pain reboot, but then that person went and worked for the AEW side with Ukes, but now I think they're back on the WWE side with 2K, so who knows? Could this game be rebooted someday? Maybe. It won't include the roster. It'll be a brand new SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. It won't be a complete reboot remaster because they'd have to license everybody again. And I don't know if they'd be able to. But as this episode comes to a close, I just one note that I forgot because I was reading it here. That's what that little pause was, but I didn't include how I came across this game. How I got it. Usually I tell the story how I got that. So a quick story of that, and then a quick story about what may be next week, and then we'll get out of here. Because I've been recording for quite a bit this time. This is a longer episode. Not bad. So I got this game as a Christmas present in 2003. I was 18, but I didn't quite have a ton of money, so I waited to get this one for Christmas. And then I spent my entire Christmas vacation and all of my free time after that playing this game. Now, I had just started dating somebody the year prior. My first real girlfriend in my life. Long term. I had started dating her in 2002. So when this game came out, we've been together for a little over a year. So I was doing that fun balance, that delicate balance of spending time with her, but also, playing the game. Fun thing about it, though, when it comes to that whole deal, she fell asleep a lot. She liked to take naps. So I got a lot of playing in. It worked out. We had a good balance when it came down to that. I never, can't say I ever got the video game complaint. I think I've always been pretty good about that balance to some degree. My stomach is starting to grumble here. It's lunchtime as I'm recording and finishing up here. So apparently it's time for me to go eat some food. But let's talk about what could be next week here on the show as we wrap things up. It might be on WrestleMania 2000. By the time this episode drops on October 30th, I'll know the answer to this question. But as I record this episode, I don't know the answer, so we got to talk about all possibilities. So recently, my Nintendo 64 died, or appears to have died. And as I record this episode, I'm still a couple of days away from getting a cleaning kit in that's going to allow me to do a little bit more of an in-depth cleaning compared to what I was able to do based with just my household resources. If I can bring this Nintendo 64 back to life, next week's episode will be on WrestleMania 2000. But if I cannot bring this Nintendo 64 back to life, not only will next week's episode not be on WrestleMania 2000, next week's episode and the week after will both be scrapped because the week after that is another Nintendo 64 title. So 2 weeks in a row will get scrapped and have to be replaced. I can tell you, based on what I replaced WrestleMania 2000 with, because I was also playing WrestleMania 2000 live on Twitch, Road to WrestleMania mode, I had a craving to play it, so I was playing it. I just completely lost my train of thought there because my stomach grumbled again. Oh, good Lord. Good Lord, good Lord. I hate when this happens. I'm getting hungry. We got to wrap it up here. Yeah, stop it. Stop it, stomach. I will feed you very shortly. Good Lord. We got to wrap this up here. My, oh, my, oh, my. What I replaced WrestleMania 2000 with? All right, I'm competing against my stomach now. That's good stuff. I was streaming WrestleMania 2000 live on Twitch. So I had to make a switch on that as well. So I think if next week can't be WrestleMania 2000, and again, by the time this episode drops, you'll have your answer. You may already know, or maybe you missed the announcement about it, and this is how you're finding out. But it's either going to be on WrestleMania 2000, or it's going to be on WWE All-Stars, which is not on my calendar yet. It wasn't going to be on there for a while, but I played WWE All-Stars on Twitch in place of WrestleMania 2000, so it only seems to make sense that I would, in turn, play or cover WWE All-Stars in place of WrestleMania 2000 on the schedule. We record game audio. All right, that's enough rambling out of me. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here this week on Dropkicks and Joysticks. As we said, next week will either be WrestleMania 2000 or WWE All-Stars. We'll have the answer by the time this episode is dropping, but as I record it, we don't know the status of my Nintendo 64. We decided it's in a coma state. It's not dead, but it's not exactly alive either. So it's in a coma state. You want to follow me out on social media? Whatever platform you're on, just search @BloodyBillBox. If I'm there, I'm there, and if I'm not, I probably never will be, because I think I found my cluster of social media networks, that being X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Teespring, Ko-fi, PlayStation Network even, if you like to play games. I don't really play games online all that often, but, some people like to have friends. I like friends every once in a while, too. But until next week, my friends, this might be one of the worst outros I've done in a while. I'm all over the place, but that's okay, because I'm competing with the stomach, but I'm also, taunting it right now by talking for a little extra. He's like, ha, 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 ha. And soon it's going to make me have a stomach growl that actually gets picked up on the microphone. So, until next week, my friends, have fun out there. Stay safe out there. Be happy out there. See, I'm ruining my own stuff. Stay safe out there. Stay happy out there. Have fun out there. Jesus. Worst outro ever. I won't blame you if you don't come back next week for another brand new episode of Dropkicks and Joysticks. I swear I'll try to do better on the outro. I was doing really good for a while there, too. Okay, stomach, I'll feed you.
Do you expect to see any violence here today?
I certainly hope so.